Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Biodiversity Spotlight. Tonight we're going to be talking about biodiversity, or more specifically, biodiversity loss. We are three research specialists focusing on biodiversity loss in the countries of Brazil, Nigeria, and right here in the United States.
Now, some of you might ask, what is biodiversity? Well, biodiversity is the variety of species in an ecosystem. Your next question might be, why are we losing it?
Habitat loss and fragmentation, the introduction of exotic species, overexploitation of plants and animals, pollution, and climate change are a few major threats to global biodiversity. Habitat loss is the result of excessive timber harvesting and deforestation, overgrazing, excessive recreational use, and agricultural land expansion. Habitat is fragmented when only isolated and disconnected pieces of habitat remain, inhibiting migration patterns and leading to the loss of range and the eventual genetic isolation of a species.
Biodiversity loss is often a combination of these factors and others. Now, let's check in with one of our reporters in Brazil.
Brazil is classified as a megadiverse country. It contains 6 terrestrial biomes and 3 marine ecosystems, and a total of 70% of the world's plants and animals. But Brazil is losing their extreme variety of life with all the habitat. Large parts of the Amazon rainforest, Brazil's most well-known biome, are disappearing. The single greatest threat is the cattle ranching industry, which is responsible for 80% of the deforestation in the Amazon. The rainforest is being replaced with slash and burn agriculture, which is where farmers cut down all the trees, burn the land, and then move on to a different plot next year. Researchers are also discovering that the impacts of deforestation spread far beyond the cut down area and into the actual forest itself. Moreover, another threat to Brazil's biodiversity is the legal wildlife trafficking trade, which is when wild animals or their byproducts are sold for medicine, zoos, or souvenirs, and nearly 38 million animals a year are lost to this trade.
And how does that affect the people living there?
The poor of Brazil are the most dependent on these natural resources, and they are the most affected. In addition, more than 200 indigenous tribes live in Brazil.
What is being done to solve the problem?
Recently, several international organizations, including the World Wildlife Fund, the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, and the Brazilian Institute of Environment and Renewable Natural Resources, have come together to set biodiversity targets for 2020, which is now known as the 2020 Initiative. 51 targets to improve biodiversity protection. The targets include establishing wildlife corridors, mosaics of protected areas, and the sustainable management of forestry and agriculture. So far, this is the best solution because it is a united approach including the Brazilian government and several outside international organizations. It also seeks to reduce habitat loss and fragmentation, which is the biggest threat to biodiversity loss in Brazil. And while the country may face some resistance from the cattle industry, the initiative seeks its sustainable management, not its elimination. Can you tell us about the situation in Nigeria?
Well, similarly to Brazil, Nigeria is suffering from large amounts of biodiversity loss due to habitat degradation and illegal animal trade. The illegal animal trade continues to devastate the local animal population because of both foreign and domestic consumers. Domestically, bushmeat has become an epidemic due to poor food security and a lack of enforcement. The black market also has a huge stake in the loss of biodiversity. Animal products, especially from Africa and Brazil, are sought after. Rhinos and elephants are among the most poached in Nigeria.
And what can be done about this problem?
Well, I would say that a local approach seems to be the best strategy. The reason that people are poaching animals and selling them on the market and on the streets is because they have a low income and very little food security. If the government could work on providing jobs and social work programs, perhaps people would not have to commit these illegal and environmentally harmful acts.
The United States contains a variety of biomes that are very biologically diverse. There are 2 primary mountain ranges and tropical climates found on Hawaii. There are several biological hotspots in the U.S., many of which are under threat from anthropogenic stressors such as pollution and overpopulation. A prime example is Hawaii's coral reef ecosystems. This beautiful biologically diverse ecosystem is under threat from the island's rapidly expanding population, industrial liners, fishermen, and indeed nearly the entire tourism industry depends on the reef. It is ironic that the growth in these industries is also the primary cause of the reef's decline. This inverse relationship brings to light the need for more restrictions within the tourism and shipping industries.
All right, so what is being done to solve issues like this?
Well, the strategies that are currently being implemented for combating losses in biodiversity are habitat restoration, pollution prevention, harbor alteration, increasing tourism, and commercial fishing regulations. The problems with the mitigation in this field is that it often requires significant short-term economic sacrifice for the survival of the present industries in the long term. In the case of the coral reef hotspot, changes to wastewater treatment and coral transplanting, along with changes in policies across the socioeconomic system, have ended in both success and failure. All right, now we're going to move on to a caller who has a question about Nigeria.
What can we do to make sure that they're not taking all those elephants' ivory?
Well, actually, activists have started dyeing rhino and elephant horns so that people, when they get the horns, can't actually use them. So that's cutting down poaching a lot.
And now we have a caller in asking about Brazil.
Oh, why is that number so high? Like, why are 38 million animals being lost? Like, what's the deal with that?
For every animal that is sold, anywhere from 3 to 10 other animals died in the process of being captured and being transported.
And now we have a caller with a question about the United States.
Yes, hello. I just went on vacation to Hawaii last month. It was beautiful, but it was freaking packed. How do we prevent tourists like myself and my husband from destructing the environment?
Well, to answer your question, what we should do is we should implement higher restrictions and regulations on tourism and set some of the reef aside, up to like 50% or more, aside for like wildlife refuges where you don't have any kind of like shipping or any kind of human presence there really, except for like the biologists who are maintaining the stewardship of the area. In conclusion, it appears that biodiversity loss in Brazil, Nigeria, and the United States can be primarily attributed to habitat loss and degradation.
Efforts to sustain biodiversity include stricter government regulations, working with businesses, and social programs for the poor. Brazil and the U.S. are setting aside land, while Brazil and Nigeria are confronting wildlife trafficking.
This involves working with all the people at the table, including the businesses, the government, and the consumers.